Okay, so hey guys, thanks for joining us again on the Utility Strategy Podcast. For a while, we've been wanting to have someone on the show from TxDOT, Texas Department of Transportation, someone who understands the ins and outs, not just of the organization, but of the site development and utility permitting process. Someone who can take a deep dive with us into due diligence, investigations, grading and drainage plans, utility plans, site and subdivision construction documents, and a lot more. So luckily, we found the right guy, Joe Alvarez. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing well, David. Thank you for having me.
How's the Texas summer in Corpus Christi?
Texas. I'm sorry, I'm not wearing my cowboy hat. That's probably what you expected.
No.
But no, it's Texas. It's already 100 degrees. At night it's high 80s. It's no relief where it's here. It's not even the hottest month. I think we're not even at August yet. So we just deal with it as best as we can. Hopefully get a cloud here and there. Even the tropics are quiet. So although we don't wish for hurricanes or anything like that, we do wish for tropical storms. We're totally okay with that. Yeah. There's no relief in sight right now at the moment. But yeah, that's you have a similar climate, so you understand.
We do understand. So Joe, give us a brief. Tell us about yourself.
Yes, sir. So, like I said, appreciate you having me on your show once again. Look forward to working with you for him in the future. I think there's a lot of collaborative potential here, and this is a good start. And so, I'm not, I love your show. Great show. A lot of people think utilities, right? Utilities isn't the architecture. It isn't the bridges, the suspension bridges, although we do have a really nice one being built here in Corpus Christi that's currently under construction. But, it's utilities. Most of the time it's in the ground, it's subterranean, and you can't really see it. But it's the reason why we can do what we can and communicate, between Israel and Texas, and the ways, literally it's the fabric of our being, in that it allows us to communicate efficiently, and to collaborate globally. And so, so utilities, it's not, I've been involved indirectly and directly with utilities for about 10 years now. I think I'm relatively young in my career. You've had a lot of really good experts on your show. I do not consider myself an expert, but I do have some information that I can definitely share with folks, and hopefully we can all work together to accomplish our goal and continue improving quality of life and improving networking and global collaboration. And so I started my career officially, I guess you could say, actually, with TxDOT as an intern in 2006 and 2007. And then I dabbled a little bit in consulting, wanted to see that side of the world. And then also did things federally with the U.S. Corps of Engineers, and then also in city municipalities as well. And all those different levels dealt with utilities in some form or fashion, whether it's water, wastewater, stormwater, and then now at TxDOT, fiber optics, electrical, overhead, underneath. You got to understand all of that. And of course, even our traffic signals, a lot of it's under a lot of the networking, and a lot of the cables are underground. A lot of the electrical components are underground. And so we deal with a lot of that stuff now. And we just try to tie it all together and provide a platform for everyone to utilize the infrastructure.
So what do you actually do today in TxDOT? Like, what are your core responsibilities?
Core responsibilities: utility permits, driveway permits, analyzing drainage, roadway construction, roadway reconstruction, roadway maintenance construction, just different types of being in an area office. You're able to really explore a good breadth amount of material in that you're able to just work on different projects in addition to the new construction that you do oversee. So there's whether it's new construction or maintenance construction, you're always it's a constant. And we're fortunate that even during the pandemic, we kept going, we kept building, we kept moving. Majority of everything we do is outside. So as long as we can do it safely, we're able to do so, and we continued in our motto, moving Texas forward. But that applies to any DOT, and that applies to anybody who's involved in infrastructure. It's about moving forward as efficiently as possible. So
let's talk a bit about permits. So what does the process look like if I'm a utility owner and I want to do construction, do maintenance, do whatever I got to do through TxDOT's right of way? How does that look like? What is the? I think that a lot of our listeners are utility owners, and they'd be very interested to understand what it looks like. Like they go through all this process, right, and all this effort on their end, and they don't always understand what it looks like on TxDOT's end. Like, what are the risks that you're undertaking? What are your considerations when you evaluate a permit? So let's dive into that.
So from a DOT standpoint, we have a district utility coordinator in our district office, and every district pretty much in Texas has that. So you start with them, you let them know this is our information. Of course, we have a standard form, and now we even have everything online. So it's a UIR, utility installation request, and from there they put together a submittal of what they intend to do, scope of work, location, of course any technical drawings and construction drawings, and of course what we ask for is their traffic control plans, and we actually have that information online. So that it's our traffic control plan, but we want to know which one they will be using from our standards. And we want to make sure that they do have that plan in place, because most of the time it's shoulder work. It's off to the side. It's not directly on the road. But we want to make sure that our traveling public is aware that something's going on, but that the public can travel safely and that the work can be done safely, and everybody has a good sense of safety is number one. So as long as we can work and travel safely, cohesively, that's the plan. We don't want, sometimes there's a closure, of course, intermittent, very small intervals that we do need to do overhead, electrical lines that do need to be crossed over. And so we will close traffic because we want safely for the line to be crossed over. However, we do those in small intervals, typically a few minutes. There's a 15-minute interval because we don't want to have to deal with a backup, especially if it's a very major interstate road. And in this case, we have a few here in South Texas, and so we don't want to necessarily close those roads, but we want to be able to have a plan in place to do what we need to do quickly, safely as possible. And so the information. So the information will go to the district utility coordinator, and as soon as they have everything, location, construction drawings, traffic control, scope of work, their intentions, of course, contact information, and whether it's the company itself or it's a consultant for the company, there also needs to be a certain release from the main utility owner that they're able to conduct business, to put the submittal together. So once we have all of that information, the district utility coordinator will send it to us in the area office, and we oversee 3 counties. So we'll, from there, review that information, and if we have any technical questions or any questions regarding traffic control, we will then bring that up and say, hey, let's say, for instance, the main thing is to avoid conflicts. So let's say, for instance, we have a road construction project that's about to begin. It's already lit, already been awarded, already lit. Let's move forward with construction. We know mobilization is going to be about this time. They're going to start work at this time. A pipeline wants to come in and go underneath. And, we know there's going to be mobilization equipment on site, or we know there's going to be paving, or we know there's going to be something going on, potentially excavation as well. Maybe it's drainage structures. We want to be able to say, well, this is going to go on, and they're going to start work this day. Can you do your installation before this day, or can you wait till we've already completed a certain section and then come in with your equipment to do what you need to do? We want to make sure there's no conflicts with both our projects and what they are proposing. And so that's the main thing. Of course, reviewing their drawings. For instance, if it's natural gas or crude, we review the calculations that's going to go and the pressures that are going to go in that line. We review fiber optics. We review, coax cable, Cat 5, Cat 6, all of those components. We review everything. And if everything seems like it's good to go, it's cohesive, we understand the plan, we understand what they intend to get done, and also their timeline, their scheduling, and everything checks out, then we will send that as an approval, as a pending approval from our office to the district utility coordinator. And at that point, if there's no other further questions or comments, then they'll go ahead and move with the approval.
Good to go. Yeah. Where does the utility data come from? Does TxDOT provide some utility data? Do they come with their own utility data?
So we provide as much information as we can. So they do reach out to us more often than not early on in their planning, and they ask for our as-built information on the roads. And the utility information that sometimes we do provide that's available on our records is potentially if there's a water line that's adjacent, a sewer line, and then of course our storm lines that we do have in our drainage areas. So we provide that to make sure that there's no conflicts, whether they're boring or wherever they're going to do their installation. We want to make sure they're aware of those, particularly drainage structures, since those are a little bit deeper at times. But that's really the extent of the information that we provide. Sometimes in our traffic plans, like for signals, that the handholds, the pedestals, things like that we do provide that information. But the information that we don't have is sometimes the electrical information for other companies, other larger utility providers, or fiber optics, or anything like that. We don't have that necessarily all the time on our plants. So we provide what we can from water, wastewater, if it's noted in our profile sheets. But of course, our drainage structures, we do provide that information to them, and it's all in the as-built. We tell them to reference it, of course, and in their planning and the review processes, and then of course go from there. So that's the extent of the information that we're able to provide most of the time.
And does TxDOT assume responsibility for that data, or is the utility owner? Oh, can you hear me now? One sec.
Is it you or me? Oh.
How about now?
Okay, we're good. Okay.
Good. Okay, yeah.
Sorry about that. It was breaking up.
It's the utilities. It's the utilities.
That's right. That's right. We're trying to improve every day.
Exactly. So with that, asking who assumes responsibility for the data? Is it TxDOT's responsibility because it came from TxDOT, or does the utility owner who's basically taking on this project, is he going to go and validate that with a SUE firm or 811? Who's responsible?
To a certain extent, we're responsible for the drainage structures, at least, that are within our right-of-ways. We are responsible for having that information. However, once the utility owner is trying to bore or do what they need to do to move these utilities across the road, they then assume responsibility because it's up to them to field verify. Of course, there's 811. There's all these. There's resources available to make sure that we can try to locate as best as possible any underground utilities, right? So they are assuming the responsibility at that point. So let's say, for instance, they need to access our right-of-way, but of course, in doing so, they have heavy equipment. They ended up needing to break our sidewalk. They need to excavate and do certain things within our right of way. We understand that that's part of the process. However, they will need to go back and replace that sidewalk. You know, remove and replace it existing from joint to joint. Of course, backfill anything that needs to be done to restore the site to the original condition. And so that's really what we ask. And so they do assume responsibility for the area that they are working in.
Basically, the utility data, it's like, how does TxDOT get its hands on the utility data of other utilities? Like, is it something like that you have like an internal database or like, how does that work?
Yeah, we don't necessarily have a tool like yours that says, "Hey, this is what we've come across." We don't. I don't know that we necessarily keep a visual database or anything GIS related to that says, "Hey, these is our where we've approved these utilities." I don't know that we necessarily do that. But we do have the log of all of the utility requests that come in, so we can always
Mm.
search and reference what was done in certain areas. We can sort the data by road or by company, or there's some ways around it that we can.
Is that open to the public? Like, if I'm a utility owner, can I come? Can I
No,
kind of?
yeah, that's not. Yeah, I think that's all internal in our system.
Okay, probably. It probably kept that way for for privacy issues. Like, I would assume, like, that
Yeah,
you don't compromise different
I
companies.
would. Correct. Yeah, I don't know what that's. I mean, technically, it is kind of public information. I don't know why we don't have that readily available to the public. That would be something I gotta, you know, discuss with division. But
Very
that
interesting.
is, yeah, that's a good question. But if you do call the local offices, we are able to try to help you. Um, at least say we approved some permits around here. And it's typically major intersections. It's typically, you know, here we do have a lot of oil and gas here in Texas. So sometimes it's pipelines
Yeah.
that we are aware of. Of course, land features sometimes can tell you a lot too. That just by analyzing, the Google Maps, the
You know,
Google Earth.
it's much better, I think, though, than, like, first of all, the fact that that you have some sort of database of information. I think, first of all, that's admirable, right? Because, like, when we look at some cities or municipalities, like, they're great databases, like what I think Houston and Austin are doing, like that they even have GIS for some of the stuff, like
Right, right.
for water lines and wastewater and stuff like that. But I think that, like, so many um top public entities need to do a much better job with kind of keeping this data, and also giving access uh,
Correct.
to any stakeholder who basically wants to work with that data. And what are we talking about? Avoiding strikes, right? Like,
Correct.
it's for the good of the public. It's not like a selfish act.
Correct. This is something we're all going to utilize and all be a part of. And we're constantly trying to make improvements and trying to enhance systems in place. Um, as soon as technology is readily available, of course, we want to get that into the infrastructure. However, once it's deemed safe and once it's the data is there that shows, there's room for upgrade and enhancement. Of course, we want to get that, accessible to the public,
What do you
and
think
that's
municipalities can do today? Like, I'm not talking, like, let's not
yeah.
make it too
So
complicated,
I
right?
think it's just records management. Of course, a lot of cities are now having their own GIS departments. A lot of engineering and public works offices have their own GIS department, and that's huge because now we were able to see exactly what. Of course, we've always had the maps for the most part, whether they were hand drawn back in the day when my father was in the
On
business,
napkins, yeah.
or yes, or if moving into the CAD world, and of course they made PDF maps of different utilities, but now right. I mean, you have to go to them to be able to access that information, or to the website to access the information. But of course, now with GIS, as soon as a project's done, you can update it, and anytime you need to reference it, you can reference it, and it's all in one place. The records are all there. Of course, you want it to be a user-friendly system. You want it to have a user-friendly interface. But that's the main thing. Is you're right. Bigger cities have begun to start improving their records management, and so that's the thing, though. So not every city's doing that. Not every county's doing that. I say maybe 25% to 30% of the city and county world maybe have something like that in place. Not everybody does. And so, especially in
It's not a lot.
rural communities don't have that yet, at least. Or if they do, they're consulting it out. But of course, bigger cities, metroplexes, Houston, the Dallas, the Austin, San Antonio, Corpus Christi Valley, El Paso, they do have those systems in place. But I think it's about now trying to get the rural community and the rural counties to be able to provide that information, because a lot of the times, especially oil and gas, it is in rural, communities.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's where we sometimes need to have that data available. And so, there's a lot of different things, but even so, that's just the recent stuff. Of course, we don't we don't even know what was put in place 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50, 100 years ago, right? A lot of times, in our experiences, we've come across, asbestos, clay pipe, ACP, sometimes even wooden pipe,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And so we don't know what's in place sometimes, or even utilities that are abandoned in place, right? So, sometimes they just plug it and abandon it in place, and you don't know that till you hit it, right? And and,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
these aren't
it's
even
unfortunate.
detected by GPRs sometimes, right? Like
That's
all
right,
these wooden stuff. Like if there's nothing conductive in it, like you're not gonna find it until you hit it.
exactly. And so, and it's unfortunate, especially if the line's hot. You don't want to hit a gas line, you don't want to hit a water line, and we always try to minimize those issues in place. But of course, if cities could sometimes, and not often, sometimes they do have a lot of those construction plans still on file somewhere. Maybe they put it away. It's very similar to what counties do with clerk records and plat records, right? You got to file it. You got to have somewhere you can reference it, right?
Some storage, yeah,
You got to reference the deed. You got to reference the birth. You got to reference the marriage. You got to reference the death, right?
yeah,
You got to
yeah,
reference the
yeah.
subdivision. You got to reference it, all of these records. And I remember dealing with my county clerk, J.C. Perez, and he's done very well to put records online now, so we can access plat and deeds and so forth. Uh, I remember just going through and seeing those records one time, and they got them all the way back to like 1700s, of course, referencing Spanish deeds, referencing,
That's
this is
incredible.
stuff that, right, it is.
Historical
And,
stuff,
and, and,
yeah.
and you can do a lot with that information if you know where to find it. Of course, I mean, this is even just maintaining, right? I mean, it takes a certain climate and environment to maintain those records, to make sure they're not just exposed to elements. And of course, this is, but the way all of that is filed, it has to be filed, right? You have to go pay a little fee for that, make sure everything's in place. Cities should adopt a similar practice, in that they're able to have those records, like, hey, we did this water line and this trunk line, huge main line. This is where it's at, and at least they maintain those files somewhere. Most cities and counties do, but sometimes after 7 years they just throw that stuff out, right? It becomes something on the shelf. It's no longer there, or there's a turnaround. There's a new city engineer, new county engineer, new public works director, new mayor, new city manager, so on, new county judge. But there is something that hopefully cities and counties can adopt, to where they can access those records and file them accordingly, or even just digitize them. right? And make that available to folks to be able to reference. Um, and we'll get to some right of way maps here a little bit later on in our show, in your show, but just being able to access that information, however old, right? However old those records are, there's still always valuable information in those, and sometimes it's not even on the drawing itself, but it's in the notes, right? It's in the special notes that may be on a drainage plan or on a
Give me an example.
plan, something that says, like for instance, in platting, there's sometimes deed restrictions, there's platting restrictions involved. Well, same thing with the notes and the details is, according to this utility was adjacent to what we installed, or, there's something to the effect that shows that there was a sewer line that was installed at least 9 feet away from the water line, or something like that, to show that there was a separation. And it may not show it on the plans, but if it says it, then at least we understand that there was something there. And it gives us a little bit more information than what we had initially to start with. And so that's the thing, is it's just records management. At some point, it would be nice for cities, and I know we can't retrieve 100% of the information that was ever put into the ground, but if they still have those records, it would be as DOT, and that we can utilize this information moving forward into whatever scope of work that's being proposed.
You know what I think? I think there should be. I think that utility owners of all types need to get some sort of credit for for also handing in their records and also digitizing them. Like I don't know, but I think that if an organization takes the effort, like what Houston and Austin have done, I think is really nice. I think they need to be commended for it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. This is the way to the future is more often than not, a lot of people are visual. So you want to be able to see on a map in reference to your area what information is there that we can. It's all about minimizing conflict, right? You want to minimize conflict with utilities, and we want to be able to access this information so that we can, or that you as a utility owner can move into a scope of work, do the installation quickly, efficiently, without any issues, right? We don't want any additional problems. We don't want to have to break sidewalks or break pavement or hit a water line or a gas line or anything like that. We don't want to be put in a position, especially that creates an unsafe situation. So we just want to be able to install the utility, move forward, fill the hole and move forward and continue on with the rest of the segments and get faster internet, right? Get faster internet and more reliable communications. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that, I'm wondering, like we're seeing a really big infrastructure boom at the moment, especially in Texas. And I'm wondering if this is an opportunity as an industry to take advantage, first of all, of the technologies that now are available to us as organizations, right? And basically start documenting and distributing this information. And I think that the combination of both, like there's like a mini financial crisis going on at the moment, which probably means that there's going to be a lot of investment in infrastructure because that's what we always do. And I think having more infrastructure on top of the infrastructure projects that we've already have going on, I think it's just like it's going to be like a once in a generation opportunity that if we don't take advantage of as an industry, I think that we're going to have another generation of barely documented utilities that are with documentation that is well, basically inaccessible and unreliable. You know what I mean? Does that make
Right.
sense?
Correct. And of course, as we continue, as technology continues to improve, you always run the risk of what you once knew being obsolete, right?
Yeah,
So we're
yeah,
always trying to improve the process and of course, best practices. In anything we do, it's about being more efficient, more cost effective. Um, you know,
mitigating that risk. Yeah,
that's what we all want to do is what we can, the most for the amount of money that we want to put towards that investment, right? We want to be able to get a rate of return in anything we do. We want faster internet. We want better communications. We want water, right? That's huge, right? Is getting water to these communities, especially when they're in droughts, uh, meeting that demand, right? But of course, when it does rain and we do experience heavy rains, we want to get that water off the roads and off. We don't want our homes flooded, right? We don't want anything like that. So we want those waters to be able to be running to the outfalls, whether they be the creeks, rivers, lakes, bays, oceans, and we want to get that water as quickly as possible out of. Um, we don't want it to affect any other infrastructure, right?
yeah,
And same thing with storms and it resiliency. It's resiliency. It's and then it's even calculating and designing that resiliency to meet a certain demand. Of course, not everything is cost effective. Of course, we can have a structure that won't fail right in a tornado. We know we have the capabilities of doing that, but can everyone afford that? Right? More often than not, they can't. And so we want to make sure that certain structures and certain infrastructure in place can withstand at least uh, to what they're designed for in order to survive Mother Nature and the elements that whether it be rain, heavy rain, or heat, or even now in Texas, we've experienced extreme freeze, and we've never. I mean, I can't
with
say
the
never.
grid, yeah,
I can't say never. In the history, I'm sure there's data somewhere, meteorological data that shows where it froze, like that. But of course, our electrical system took a huge hit with the demand as far as the heat goes and needing that heat, and it was not ready for that kind of demand and that level of demand. And so we're constantly learning, I think, from that. At least I hope we're learning. I know I am, of what we can do to cost effectively make improvements that would hopefully be resilient to that in the future.
What is
So,
what is TechStat doing at the moment to basically promote resiliency, like amongst the utility owners or amongst the
oh yeah, well,
SOPs? Like what's
well,
happening there?
there's a lot of things that TechStut does to promote sustainability and resilience in our infrastructure, whether it's pavements or whether it's concrete. We do a lot of things. We've done recycled tires, and we've melted that down, put it in the pavement. We've done different things with crushed concrete and recycling crushed concrete from old structures and putting that back into mixtures. Of course, running all the tests. We have a huge lab in our Austin division office, and we're constantly doing what we can to promote uh, reliance, sustainability, and also resilience. And that's what we wanted. I mean, that's in everything that we do. And I think TxDOT is probably the leader in the United States for our infrastructure and for our bridges. And we have pretty good bridges based off of different factors. But I know ASCE does a report card, and we fared pretty well on that. So overall, nationally, I think there has now been a huge investment. Hopefully, we can get there. But Texas performs very well, and so we are very proud of that.
I think in general, we've worked with a number of DOTs nationwide, and I feel very comfortable saying that it's
Okay, there we are.
at work.
Yeah, we're good.
Good. Okay. What was I saying? I was giving compliments to TechStop. So I was saying that like
Oh,
we've worked with we interact with a lot of DOTs. Like we've been around the nation, and I've got to say that it's the most fun to work with TxDOT because there's just a working system in place. Like from the
absolutely.
permits to the data to making sure that so many things are online and accessible. Look, it's not the system isn't perfect, right? Like if I could have given the website a bit of an update and made it a bit more organized, I probably would have. But I think that when we compare it to a lot of other DOTs and the level of infrastructure that they have, their organizational infrastructure. I mean, I think that TxDOT is probably the kind of top five most advanced in the nation. Is where I'd put it. It's just
I
it's
appreciate
very
that,
nice
and
to see.
we're always constantly trying to improve the system. And I know we're big on GIS now, so we're building our own GIS departments from within to be able to continue keeping up with that data and then doing what we can to continue providing more information
Tell us a bit about that.
to do our part.
What's happening on the GIS front in TxDOT?
So right now we have a couple of different things that are readily available for the public to access and for stakeholders to access. And the things that I would recommend, there's really four main things. So it's called a statewide planning map, and you can just Google TxDOT statewide planning map. It'll bring you right up to it, and that alone can provide you so much information, whether it's speed limits, area offices, reference markers, um, just there's so much data just on that statewide planning map alone, and we utilize that information. I use it every day. You just never know what you need to access. There's even traffic volumes on there that the public can access. And so I do my best to promote that to consultants and to cities and other shareholders to utilize that information, um, especially on traffic counts. So they want to improve intersections, or they intend on doing something at certain intersections. There's traffic volumes there that they can understand what level of service those roads are performing
Are
at.
there any
There's also
efforts to get utility data on the plan?
that is something I would need to discuss with our division office. I'm not sure what their intentions are, but I imagine at some point it would be nice to be able to share that information. So I agree with you. Maybe even putting at least our storm drains and things that we have within our means, understanding what's there, inlets, or like for instance, I know City of Corpus Christi, their GIS map shows inlets, manholes, storm lines, water lines. So if we have those infrastructures within our systems, it would be nice to show that at some point in the future. So you're right. There's always room for improvement. But at some point it would be nice. I don't know what their intentions are. I imagine at some point their intentions are to get more information on there. So there's that. There's a TxDOT statewide planning map. The other one that's huge to reference that a lot of utility owners reference is the TxDOT right-of-way maps. So we have that online. That's literally, it's called the TxDOT right-of-way asset map. So you just Google it, TxDOT asset map, and that shows all of the right-of-ways in Texas, everything, and it has the maps for them, and that's public information. You can go look that up,
Oh,
and that shows that's we go based off of our internal survey departments. Hey, this is the information that's there. How wide is the right of way? Is it 100? Is it 120? Does it vary? You know, just different things, and all of that information is there. It's on file. It's what we have for our roads, and anybody can access that. But especially property owners and utility owners can access that information to understand the parameters that they need to deal with for their installations and their scope of work. And then the other thing that we utilize is the TxDOT project tracker, and we try to
we
provide
love
that
that.
information to show what's coming up, what's underway, what's coming up in the next few years, what's coming up long term in the next 10 years, uh, and it shows it shows our planning we do have our own TP&D department, Transportation Planning and Development, and that information is out there that shows what the offices are all planning and what they're all going for. And so there's a lot of information out there just from TxDOT alone. So that gives you an idea of what we're able to give the public, at least from this standpoint. And of course, that's not just that. There's called the TxDOT Open Data Portal, and that portal can give you so much information from reference markers, and it's all downloadable in GIS formats. So you're able to get that information, download a shape file, download a KMZ file, download an Excel file, a CSV file, and that's all data. That's all data driven. So you're able to get that information, extract it, provide it into your submittal, and use it to plan and design for any proposed work. So I would encourage, industry professionals and the public to utilize those readily available systems. We're constantly updating those. That's as good as it gets right now as far as public access information that you can go. That's interactive. This information is interactive. So there's something you need, you're able to get it and pull it and see it and study it yourself. And so I would encourage industry professionals and the public to utilize that information.
Normally, towards the ending of every episode, we have two questions. The first is, what would you recommend to the industry or to stakeholders, to active players and thought leaders to do differently? And I think that's very much what you just said now, like to take advantage of the TxDOT systems, which, like I said, are really, really commendable. And the second question, which I'm going to take advantage and ask, is who do you think is the next person we should have on our show?
So I would say, to answer your first question, records management. It's huge. If we can somehow, some way get this information that we're doing, whether it's even just current information, digitize it, get it online, put it on a map, update maps, get that information on there now, at least for what we have going on. And then at that point, move on to what we can do to access the previous information of other projects that were completed and installed and get that information into the system.
Couldn't agree more.
Best practices, records management. That's the main thing. And let's try to get information. And I understand there's some things that's classified and you do need to withhold. But for the most part, this information is readily available and I think should be even more accessible to the public. And then to answer your second question, so I'm very fortunate to be well connected in the civil engineering industry. And so I have a lot of very good friends, whether it's in Texas, Louisiana, Nevada. There's a lot of folks that I think can still be featured that are even more experts, right, in the actual installation processes and being able to give recommendations for certain utilities. One that comes to the top of my head is Travis Isaacson, and he's out of the Austin area.
Yeah.
We met through ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineers, and we both serve on the state level together. Austin's a very good friend of mine. Travis is a very good friend of mine from the Austin area, and he is a SUE engineer, so he's all about utilities.
So we've got to get him on the show.
He's very personable. He understands the Austin market, San Antonio. He oversees the Central Texas market, I believe, for his company. Very, very knowledgeable. And then again, in the future, it'd be nice. I can definitely reach out to our division folks in Austin from our right-of-ways department or utilities department to see what they do have coming up for the future that we'll be able to share and utilize with all stakeholders.
That would be wonderful.
And then in addition to that, good friends with Christina Swallow, and she's the executive director of Nevada DOT. There's a tons of folks that I can gladly show you the way. But those are the top three right now.
Joe, we're going to take this offline, and then you're going to give me a list.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. Joe, I'd like to thank you. This was an awesome episode, very informative. It was great to learn about the interaction that TxDOT has with the state and with the stakeholders in the state, and what TxDOT is up to, and how the organization is improving its data management and its accessibility to the public. So again, really commend you guys for doing that. Thank you on behalf of the industry, right? So yeah, thank you so much for being on the show, and looking forward to next time.
David, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to represent TxDOT in this fashion, and I look forward to the new horizons that your company can expand to with 4M. And then, like I said, it's all about collaborative efforts, and how we can get this information to stakeholders and to the public, and move along, improve quality of life. That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. Thanks, Joe.